Well, I'll start with something that I heard.
Hi, and welcome to Passionate Purpose. Episode 2. This is a series, and I've got the amazing John Carr and the amazing Ben Gay III, and they are sharing their wisdom with us today. And right now, we're going to dive in and learn about building strategic business relationships. Gentlemen, take it away. How do we do it?
Go, John. You're the master.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I'll start with something that I heard from Ben Gay on the other segment. He mentioned the word integrity. And I think when you're building any type of a business relationship, you have to be totally honest. I'm going to draw something from the Bible that helped me a great deal. And this is one of the hardest things for me to do. We're supposed to follow the teachings of the Bible if you're Christians, and I'm a Christian. It said we're to think of others better than ourselves. That's very hard to do because we always love each other or we love ourselves, and we should. But when I started trying to put other people before me and put myself in their shoes and always be honest and try not to impress people with your newfound knowledge. I mean, we don't know everything. So if you're counseling people or you're successful and people seem to depend on some of your ideas, if you don't know an answer to something, don't give a false response or a false answer. And I'm very proud to have a lot of relationships like Ben. We've known each other for over a half a century and we're still communicating. We're on your program here together, and we developed a business. And Ben was one of my mentors. He was president of one of the companies that Donna Sue and I were distributors in. So I give Ben Gay a lot of credit because he gave us the opportunity. I know he talked about action and integrity and everything, but you need an opportunity and you need to take advantage of it if you can. But building business relationships, in my opinion, is being honest, being straightforward, being transparent. Don't try to be something that you're not, and really let that other person know you love them, that you really sincerely care for them, and you can show that by your deeds and by your actions toward them. And I think this will help build a business relationship and strategically. And Ben mentioned Bernie Dorman, he mentioned CEO Space, and this is one of the things I picked up from them. I didn't realize I had been doing it. He said, we don't have competition, we collaborate. And you mentioned the word collaboration yourself, Kimberly, earlier. So rather than being competitive, let your friends and business associates know you're collaborating with them. You want to help them, and in helping them, this will automatically help you. Ben brought up Zig Ziglar earlier, and Zig was one of my mentors too. And he made something famous. If you help enough other people get out of life what they want, you will get out of life what you want. So I took that to heart. And Ben, I don't know if you remember, Zig and I were instructor generals in Holiday Magic back in Chicago.
I remember.
And Zig was going to go off and start his own motivational company, and he wanted me to go with him to be a partner. And I'm not saying this to brag, but I was earning more money than he was as an instructor general because you allowed me also to keep my distributorship, Ben, when I became an instructor general, which wasn't normally allowed, but you made that exception for me. Thank you again for that too, Ben. But anyway, he went on to become famous, and he says, I'm going to borrow something from you because I've heard that you keep saying this in your seminars. If you help enough other people become what they want to become, you'll become what you want to become. And I'm going to borrow this. And John, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to give you credit for this, but I'm going to put it in my books. I'm going to do it in my speeches. And he did. But I never will forget, because I tried to go to as many of his seminars as I could, because he would usually introduce me and tell a story that we were together and all that. And at one time he mentioned, he says, I want somebody to send up where I got this saying from. That's the only credit he ever gave me for that. But anyway, I think that can sum it up a little bit, Kimberly. If you help enough other people, you're going to be able to help yourself automatically instead of focusing on you and me and I. It's we, it's us, it's they, it's them. Anyway, this is just a little bit of my feeling, and I know Ben's going to add a lot more to this. He has a tendency to put the frosting on top of the cake. So go ahead, Ben, do your magic.
Before Ben takes it away, I love the passion. I love the passion. I could, I'm just meeting you for the first time, but I can see it. I mean, you're really fired up, and I can really, really appreciate it. And if you need to grab a tissue, please do that. I know this is really emotional because, audience, this is the first time that John and Ben have been reconnected.
Face to face for over 50 years.
This is how the world works, and it's just amazing.
I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. I'm so honored, and I'm almost speechless for you putting us together, Kimberly. Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, Ben, for allowing me to be on the same program with you.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Always been one of my favorites, John. You know that. John and I and Donna Sue spent a lot of time together coming back from Nassau on a DC-6B that we bought that preceded the DC-7, DC-8. If you want to spend a long time on a plane, Kimberly, go somewhere and get a DC-6. That's a top plane. And it was good. It was the old Chicago White Sox plane. We bought it from them. Sat 42 people first class, had 2 galleys, 4, we called them stewardesses, flight attendants now, 4 flight attendants and so on. And I thought, well, this will be fun. I think it was the first time I'd been on it since we bought it. This will be fun. I had no idea how slow a DC-6 is. I gotten spoiled by the Learjet and the Gulfstream. But we got to know each other very well.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned it, I got to mention this before I forget it. Excuse me, but I owe a lot of my success to my dear late wife, Donna Sue, because I'm sure she opened a lot of doors for me, Ben. And like you said, you can open a door, but I was able to follow through. But I owe her so much credit. I just want everybody to know that.
Kimberly, Donna Sue was beautiful inside, more importantly, and outside. But outside, she was as good looking as a person can be. You said in the earlier segment, John, you went and played golf, and Donna Sue went swimming at Greenbrier, and the guys sat around and looked at her. I was one of the guys who was sitting around looking at her. And I can tell you, that's 50 years ago. She had on a white, not a bikini, but a white 2-piece bathing suit, hooked together in the front with a brass ring or gold ring or something, and at each hip with a gold ring. And my wife at the time, the late great Marcia Gay, explained to me on more than one occasion that I had looked at Donna Sue long enough.
Before we get off of that subject, guess what I have hanging on the wall just before I go into my bedroom from my living room and dining room at night? Every night when I go into my bedroom, guess what I have hanging on my wall?
A picture of her in that bathing suit?
Yeah, good. I have our marriage certificate framed and in a plaque. So every night before I go to bed, because my wife had Alzheimer's and I was her caregiver for over a decade, and it said, for better, for worse, sickness and health, until death do us part. And so that's why I was her caregiver until she went to heaven. And that's what I walk into my bedroom and I see that every night. It reminds me.
Oh,
well, you're always kind enough to send me things. This comes from you. And it's a bunch of letters we exchanged.
Oh, bless your
back
heart,
in the day, and you saved them and sent them to me. And I'd love to have a picture of to frame on my wall of your marriage certificate, but I'd prefer one in the white bathing suit with a
okay. Let's get back to those strategic relationships.
I'm going to go tell you something.
Oh my gosh. Oh, he's going to get the bathing suit.
I thought he was hanging in my closet is the bathing suit.
Can you see this?
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
That's
that's not
true.
the bathing suit. That's from the contest, right?
That's on the she was Miss Arkansas in the Miss Universe pageant, and that's
Yeah.
her on the float in that parade. And I met her just after that, and
You sly devil.
there was 107 contestants from all over the world in the Miss Universe pageant. She was the only one that year that got a movie contract, and that's why we lived in Hollywood for a while when she was doing the movies and TV. But isn't that beautiful? I have her picture all over my place.
Find the bathing suit and I'll pay you for it.
I don't know if I have that same one, Ben.
Oh my God.
Isn't that amazing, Kimberly, that Ben has that good a memory?
That is amazing.
About
Maybe,
some things.
I was looking, or I was listening to the processes that you were saying that you both kind of had in place, that made you the systems that made you really effective. And, that's got to play into the memory, right? It's the strengthening the cognitive function. Oh my gosh.
It also frees you up, Kimberly, to think of things. In other words, if I'm not trying to remember what I have to do next Wednesday at 4:00, all I have to, people say, do you plan your day the day before? I have things on the calendar for tomorrow that were written down there a year ago.
Wow.
So all I have to do to figure out what I'm supposed to do today is go to the office, sit down, open up the calendar. There it is. Much of it is the same 10 things every day, that I do automatically, but I still write them down. And then the others are specific. My brother-in-law is having his 78th birthday tomorrow, so I've got to call him. And he'll say, I can't believe you remembered. Well, I remembered because I wrote it down in last year's calendar and moved it up. So I don't have to remember anything.
Thus the toenails.
It's the toenails. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I think at some point, if they snagged on my socks, I'd have remembered, but I don't have to. 4 weeks, they never snagged. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
I want to compliment Ben. At our age, Ben, if you're still clipping your own toenails, that's pretty good. I also clip mine too.
It's getting harder. It's getting harder.
It is.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's get back. Let's get back on topic and talk. John shared some really important wisdom around building those strategic relationships in our businesses. John, can you speak to that? Can you share your wisdom in regards to relationships?
I can. I'm not sure it's wisdom, but it has worked for me. First of all, I was born in Massachusetts, but I got over that. I was raised as a Southerner by the grace of God. And Missouri isn't technically Southern, but they like to pretend they are. So John's a Southerner too. And we come by it naturally. We come from people who are storytellers. We go to church. I used to go to Ebenezer Baptist Church occasionally and watch Daddy King, who was a better speaker than Martin Luther King Jr. ever was. More exciting, not as intellectual, but I grew up watching people perform and tell stories and bring things to light and so on. So being a storyteller and making friends easily is a big part of what I've managed to accomplish over the years. How do I do it? Let me give you sort of a structure. And this sounds like Gigi calls it programmed warmth. When she gets a birthday card and flowers and so on, she says, oh, look what popped up on your calendar. Because she knows that on May 28th in this calendar, it's written down, for next year. May 28th is her birthday. 2 days before that, it says make dinner reservations. Beneath that, order flowers. Move up 1 year.
Wow.
By then I have the next calendar. So it, again, frees up your mind. But the way that I do it, and it comes naturally because I grew up around Southern storytellers and friendly people, is first when I meet someone, we're talking about business, but this is everywhere. I don't care what the situation is. First, if there's anything I can possibly compliment or point out, I do. We had dinner at a local pub the other night, and a lady who's very pretty, normally waits on us, had on a bright red top, not unlike yours, John. Hers was a little more feminine, but not unlike yours. And when she walked up, it was spontaneous and honest, but I'm thinking, here comes someone, what can I compliment her on? Well, the red top and her coloring. I said, my God, you look spectacular. And she said, I heard red was my color. You made my day. And she went floating away to get our drinks and so on. And I thought, well, see, that costs nothing. Makes me feel good, which and that comes back tenfold, made me feel better probably than it made her feel. And it might have been, I might have said her blouse. I was talking about the overall effect of what she had on. But I always find something to compliment and or make note of because it's unusual. Mm-hmm. And I also look for the unusual people. I sat in Charlie Manson's cell for a total of 9 hours, 3 different visits. He was interesting. I was working at San Quentin. He saw me. They said, he'd like to meet you. Do you want to do that? I said, sure. Because it adds to the storytelling. The fact I know Charlie Manson, or knew him, he just died not too long ago. The fact that I knew him adds to my ability to be semi-interesting in storytelling and giving compliments and so on. I was attitude coach for the astronauts of Apollo 15, 16, 17, because I was friendly to one of our cosmetic distributors, Jim and Jeannie Harrington. You might remember them, John. He was launch test supervisor of the manned space program. Yeah. I complimented Jeannie because I loved her and she was a nice lady, to the point that she invited me down for the launch of Apollo 14. Spent the night and had a picnic with the launch and ground crews of Apollo 15, 16, 17 in their backyard. I came with my autograph book. It turned out they were coming to meet Ben Gay because she built me up so much. I thought, oh my God, what do you say to this crowd? Well, they were just normal folks, but I complimented them, to the ground crews. You guys, they get all the credit. They get to ride around in the Corvette the local Chevrolet dealer provided to any flight status astronaut. They get all the glory, and you're doing all the work. I've been around here enough now to know who does the work. And oh my God, somebody appreciates me. You understand there are people in the control room. There are people in Huntsville, Alabama that put this thing together. There would be nothing to fly or go up in if it weren't for us and so on. So I acknowledge that. That's a compliment. So by habit, I start out that way in any relationship, and then you ride it for years to come. Craig Anderson, you may remember, John, just ordered some copies of the closers from me. Yeah, I haven't heard from him in 50 years. Wow. But when he, and I'm going to sign them momentarily, when he ordered, he said, you may not remember me. And I said, of course I do. Well, what I want is some more closers books. I said, well, you were a distributor selling them at one time, so we'll honor your distribution. Oh my God, you remember me. This is unbelievable. And I can hear, I don't know how they do it nowadays, but it was like putting the hand over the thing and yelling at somebody, he remembers me. Well, it's a 50-year relationship now, I mean, with a 49.8 gap in the middle, but that's all right. He remembered because I complimented him and I treated him fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules when we met. I don't remember how I did it, but that's how I do people. I treat them fairly, squarely, decently, by the rules. I call it straight. I'll be straight with you, you be straight with me. And sometimes that leads to a little trouble. I have to tone down my straight a bit occasionally because people get offended hearing that. They say they want to hear the truth, but they don't. So you have to learn how to shape the truth. Yes.
So let me ask you this then. So what is the difference between straight and being blunt? I mean, is that the same, or is straight more kind of like a softer?
Well, straight can be, it's based on the relationship. In the closers part 2, the best thing I've ever written about selling is in the last chapter. It's called sales infiltration.
Yeah.
In sales infiltration, you establish the relationship with the customer up front. In other words, I'm a salesman, therefore I'm a liar, cheat, and thief. You're a customer, therefore you're going to duck and weave and tell me untrue things to avoid making a decision. Well, we can sit and wait for that and wait for the other shoe to drop, or we can say, hi, my name's Ben Gay. I'm the feared, dreaded salesperson you've heard about. You think I'm a liar, cheat, and thief, and I think you'll say anything to get out of making a decision. So let's establish a straight relationship. I'll be straight with you. I'm here to sell you whatever, if you're qualified to buy it. And you're here to defend the money in your pocket as long as you possibly can. I understand that. So we don't have to be offended by it, or we don't have to play games. Magic words, fair enough. When they say fair enough, I can say anything to them. Anything. I can ask anything. And at the end of the presentation, when I say, well, I've got to check with my brother-in-law in Cleveland, who's an accountant, before I say, oh, we said we'd be straight with each other. You probably don't have a brother-in-law. If you do, he's not an accountant and he doesn't live in Cleveland. So we agreed we weren't going to do that. See what I mean? I've gotten license to be open with them. And then I figured out years ago and coined the phrase, no one gives me credit for it, that people, but I'm not whining, people like to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And very recently, I heard somebody say something, I thought, I'm adding to that. People do business with people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe.
Very good.
So people say, well, yeah, but I haven't known them 20 years. Or in the case of Craig Anderson, I haven't known them 50 years. I can establish a trust relationship, know, like, trust, and feel safe within about 5 minutes max. Yeah. So I don't have to know you for 50 years to be your buddy. If anything, I'm a little loose in who's a good friend. People say, well, how can you be a good friend? You just met him. I said, because that's what I do. I get up in the morning and I go looking for good friends. When I meet someone, here's an opportunity to have a meaningful impact on their life and mine. We were in a restaurant here not too long ago, and a young man said, "Are you the Ben Gay?" And I said, I said, are you like a parole officer or something like that? Before I answer the question, I want to know what's the relationship. He said, if you're the Ben Gay who used to live right down the freeway here, one exit in Cameron Park, and went to Sam's, it was a restaurant down there that lack of other options we all went to. And I said, yeah, that's me. He said, well, you're a legend in our house. My mother waited on you one night, and as she put down the plate, you notice, and he said, she's a very attractive lady, and you mentioned that, but as she put down your plate or something, you notice she bit her fingernails to the quick.
Oh.
And you said to her, what is a beautiful lady like you biting her fingernails? Well, I don't know, it's a nervous thing. I said, well, I'm paraphrasing what he said, and he was paraphrasing what I said 40 years before. I said, let me make this simple for you. How would $100 change your life? That'd be almost 1,000 today. She said, well, it could make a big difference. I said, well, the first time I come in here and your fingernails are out past the tips of your finger, I'll give you $100 cash. And I took out a $100 bill out of my pocket, and I said, I'm going to isolate this in my wallet separate. This is your $100, but I want to see the fingernails. Month later, whatever, she came over and said, hi, Mr. Gay, how are you? I'd almost forgotten about it. I said, let me check. They were all out past the fingernails. This gentleman who was a bartender in another place said, my mother has the prettiest fingernails on the planet, and she takes pride in having them done professionally and so on. And she calls them her Ben Gay nails.
Oh.
See, you just never know. I had a gentleman, I'm not going to, I'll quit bragging about myself, but had a woman, a man friend. He went out to lunch one day with a business partner of mine, Sam Mayo, and my name came up. That wasn't the purpose of the lunch, but somehow Sam Mayo mentioned my name. He said, Ben Gay, Marin County, San Rafael. And he said, yeah. And he dropped his head down and started crying. And Sam was telling me, he said, I thought, my God, what did Ben do to this guy? Am I in business with the wrong person?
Yeah.
Well, it turned out he met me in a seminar, called up spontaneously one day and asked if he could come over and talk to me about something. He was in San Francisco, drove over the Golden Gate Bridge, met with me. We had a nice little meeting. I gave him a pep talk about whatever the subject was. I think it was about starting a business and not letting people get you down and so on. He drove back over the bridge, started his business, and became very successful. Hence, he was meeting with my partner. But in his car, the suicide note was already written. For some reason, before they jump off the bridge, I was in the Coast Guard and used to pick them up on that side when I was in the reserves. They bring important things with them and stack them up, usually clothing or something. I don't know why, but everybody who jumps off that bridge leaves something important to them behind and a note. And he said, my plan was to go over and talk to Ben. And if it worked out well, then I'd go back to work. But what I really expected to do was drive back to the center of the bridge, park the car, and jump over. Even been there to practice how to get over that railing. Because it's not, unless you're a kangaroo, it's not easy to do. And he said, so you tell Ben that I really appreciate what he did. I didn't know I did anything, but I know what I did. I know what I did, but I don't remember that. I complimented him. I got to know him. I got him to like me. I got him to trust me and to feel safe with me. And therefore, he didn't jump off the bridge. Mm. So that's the formula that I use. And I don't mean to sound cold about it, like, well, you're not really, you don't really like people. You're cold and calculating. I'm both. People say, and John, with your background and all the things you've done, probably $1 billion or $2 billion in stuff you've raised and given away and so on. People say, well, I give without any expectation of getting anything back. And they wait for the round of applause. I don't give because I'm going to get something back, but I'm not stupid. I know the rule. The rule is what you hand out comes back tenfold. Mm-hmm. When I gave the nice young lady $100 to grow her fingernails, I didn't know. The punchline to that story is when I asked for the check, there was no check. The young man picked up our dinner and drinks that night. So I put out $100, had to wait 40 years, but I got back $200 or something. What you hand out comes back, and it's come back many other times. People get confused. It doesn't always come back from whom you thought it would come back, or as fast, or with an explanation. But whenever I do good for people, I feel good because I think I don't know what's coming, but something will come of this encounter. And back to the point that we were discussing, that's exactly the way I operate in business. It's the reason John and I here cannot have seen each other for, we were estimating 52 years. We've mailed stuff back and forth and been on the phone once after a 40-year gap, but no time passed. John's face came up on the screen. There's John Carr. Okay. Last time I saw him was probably coming back from Nassau or at Greenbrier. The last time was at the International Convention in San Rafael at the Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. And I want to close this out really quick because I think we can talk for hours. Yes. I want to close this out with John. Can you leave us with some last minute words on how we can move forward in your experience? How can we move forward? How can we continue to build these quality relationships? Because we heard Ben's amazing stories about, and listeners, I hope you're listening into this because you have to listen. You really have to take time and you really have to listen because there's so much going on here in these conversations. And when you really listen, you can really hear, and then you can apply it. This is gold. This is gold. So, John, can you leave us just with a few words as we close out?
Boy, you give me a rough assignment. Following Ben Gay is not the easiest thing in the world because he's one of the best storytellers in the world. I'm going to have to pick up on something that he said, and that's he gives compliments. I never will forget. I was vice president of a modeling school in Chicago because my wife became a top model in Chicago once we moved from California to Chicago. And you sounded like J. Douglas Edwards there for a few minutes, Ben. Remember him?
I do. I wrote his book after he died, Sales Closing Power. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was another mentor for us. But anyway, when Ben talked about compliment, when I was vice president of this modeling school, we had a saying, and this may come off a little harsh. I don't mean it to, because I mean it with love. But I tried to teach the instructors that trained these new models, and we had a business college there and a stenotype school. I said, remember, CCS, because we had to do a little bit of critique in our teaching. So I said, C for compliment. So compliment them on something. And then criticize, C comes next, and then last, suggest. So if you're an instructor and you're going to want to gain the trust and the faith and the safety that Ben talked about earlier, and get to like the people you're trying to teach and instruct, CCS, compliment them first. Get them to feel good and comfortable. They're getting to like you. You're saying something really nice about them. And then if you're going to give them a little critique, don't make it into a personal criticism. Make it in a more general area so they wouldn't take it personally, because you don't want them to dislike you once you get them to like you. And then you make your suggestion on what they should do or consider doing. I never like to preach to people. I always said, here's what you might want to consider. Here's something that you might consider that you might need to do possibly. So I tried to soften it as best I could, but I sure like what Ben said. You get them to like you, but he also said something at the end I hadn't heard before. Let them feel safe with you. If they feel safe and they trust you and they like you, they're going to listen. You said, Kimberly, you got to listen. And I think if I have one good attribute of all I would like to have that I don't have, it's I became a good listener. I know where I live. I live in one of the most beautiful independent senior living facilities in the country. And I try to jump around tables during meals. And everybody thinks I'm quiet. They say, John, you hardly ever talk. And I don't say, well, I can't get a word in edgewise. That's why I don't. But I'm listening. And the more I listen and look at and have eye contact with the people around this table, they never shut up. Yeah. So being a good listener is important in developing a strategic business relationship.
I love it. I love it. That is gold. That is gold. Gentlemen, you did it again. Audience, hopefully you're tuning in. Hopefully you're listening and you got those notepads out. You know, you saw Ben. He's got those yellow memo pads.
It's changed since you last saw it.
Oh.
I love it. I love it. And we are, please join us for our next. And it's the best of Ben Gay III and John Carr. More in our next episode. Have a great day.